G'day fellow furniture wreckers, welcome back to my YouTube channel. This week's video I am actually going to be painting this little piece behind. Usually I've got a particular type of furniture that I would look for to paint and upcycle, but I thought I'd change it up a little bit. This is similar-ish to like an IKEA-y type piece. Could be IKEA, I'm not sure, but it's that kind of thing. It's pre-painted, it's got a factory finish. That peacock's really loud, and I'm going to see if I can upcycle it into something a little bit more attractive. So this actually cost my mum, she found it in a second-hand shop, less than a tenner, and quite rightly so, because it's not the nicest of things to look at. So I am going to transform it into something hopefully a little bit nicer to look at, with the use of some Dixie Belle products, and I'm going to start with prep. No matter what the piece you are painting or where you've got it from, it's always a good idea to clean your piece first. I would not start painting a piece until I've cleaned it, and this is definitely no exception. Just because it's got a factory finish, you still need to give it a good clean. So I'm cleaning it inside, out, upside down, all the rest of it. And this is Dixie Belle's White Lightning Cleaner, which is a heavy duty degreasing cleaner. So no matter what is on the surface of that piece, whether it's cleaning residue like a polish with silicone in, or oils from fingers, or cosmetic products, you know that this cleaner is going to cut through what is on that surface, and that is the most important thing. So I give it a good rub all over using a disposable shop cloth thing, and then this cleaner you do need to rinse off the surface. Again, I just use a microfiber cloth, some nice clean warm water, and just give it a thorough rinse down. So the next part of the prep process with finishes like this, surfaces like this, is to prime. You can absolutely paint straight over the top of this, and some people do. However, the durability of your paint finish is not going to be great. Your paint is going to start to come off because you haven't given it enough grip to sit on this surface. Like I said, this is a factory finish, and this also applies to anything that's non-porous: glass, metal, plastic, laminate. This primer will go on pretty much any surface as long as you've cleaned, and you can paint 2 coats on it, and it will give you the grip that you need for your paint to apply and stay on. That's the most important thing. I could apply paint on top of this, it just wouldn't stay for very long. So that is part of what this does. This is also a stain blocking primer. So if you are working with a wooden surface, so a pine chest of drawers for example, and you were worried about bleed through, this also tackles bleed through. So it's an all-in-one primer. You've got your grip, your adhesion side of things to give grip to paint for shiny, slippery surfaces, or it could be just be to a wooden finish that's got a high shine varnish on that you don't want to sand off. I've done that before as well. And it also is a stain blocking primer as well. And no, you do not need to sand before using this. One more thing before I prime this. You can roll this, you can spray it, you can brush it on. A lot of people choose to use chip brushes. However, I prefer to use one of Dixie Belle's synthetic brushes. The reason being is I can get a better finish with this than I can my chip brushes. Chip brushes have got natural bristles. They're also not as high grade bristle quality as these. So whilst you can absolutely use them to prime and then dispose of them, or keep that as a priming brush, you can absolutely do that. I just prefer to use these brushes. These are an investment, but they are worth their weight in gold. The finish that you can get with these is delightful. So that's the reason that I use this. I always just make sure to wash my brush straight afterwards with Scrubby Soap once I've used Bond Emboss primer, because once that's dry on there, you ain't getting it off. So just to recap about this primer, because I do tend to waffle ever so slightly in front of the camera, it's a water-based stain blocking and adhesion primer. So you can use it for creating adhesion on shiny, slippery, glossy surfaces. You can also use it to block stains if you are painting wooden surfaces. It's water-based, it has no horrible odour or nasty chemicals in it. It's easy to clean up because it's water based. Just make sure you use Scrubby Soap. It comes in 3 colours. You can get clear, white and grey, and it's very easy to use, as you can see from the video here. As always, I will link all of the products that I am using in this video in the description below, and they are affiliate links, which means if you click on them and make a purchase from the Dixie Belle website, I earn a small commission, but it won't cost you a penny more. So my inspiration for this piece is actually this little side table that I saw on Pinterest from a furniture retailer, and I love the quirkiness of it, love the hand painted kind of design, so I thought I would kind of use that as a little bit of inspo for the piece that I'm working on. So the primer has been dry 24 hours. Excuse the hair, by the way. I've been swimming and it just goes massive after I've been swimming. So primer's been dry 24 hours. Hopefully I will have inserted a little picture of my inspiration piece that I found online and thought I would try and kind of emulate that as best I could. So hopefully you've seen that. And now I'm going to try and figure out that kind of reddy pinky colour. I've got 2 Dixie Belle chalk mineral paint colours there. We've got Barn Red and Peony, and I'm going to put some on a paper plate and then kind of just put it on. I'm not going to mix it. I'm not going to mix a colour because that piece was kind of, it wasn't one flat colour. So I'm going to put 2 dabs of paint on the plate and then kind of double dip and see what happens. So this first colour that I'm using is Barn Red. It's a little bit thicker than usual because I accidentally left the lid on it. The second colour that I'm putting on the plate is Peony. Again, I will list and link all of the colours that I've used in the description below. And I'm just working in very small areas because I'm going to mix the paint on the surface of the furniture, and this will give me a kind of more tonal look. If I just poured pink and red in together, I'd get a different colour. Obviously I'd get a mix, but it would still be one flat colour. And my inspiration piece looked kind of a little bit as though it had like a little bit more tonal variation going on. It wasn't just one flat colour, and that helps with that kind of faux age look. Obviously it's quite a modern looking piece and I didn't want it to look modern. I love kind of emulating age and kind of giving it a bit more character. So this is going to help do that. So this is the first coat going on, so I'm not being too precious about it. I'm just getting it on and just adding a little bit of pink, a little bit of peony, and then just kind of blending it on with the use of some water as well because it is very hot in the UK at the moment. So that's not bad colour, given it's my first attempt to kind of make that raspberry shade, but it's a bit dull. So for my second coat, I'm going to use Honky Tonk Red, which does lean a bit pink anyway, and then I'm going to put a tiny bit of Amethyst with it. Very rarely use purple, not a purple fan at all. However, this I think might be a better combination. I don't know. I'm just going to try it and see what happens. If you are using purple to mix or blend or anything, just remember purple is a very dominant colour. So I'm only going to need a very tiny amount. I am going to decant it onto a plate because otherwise it's just going to end up looking purple, and I do not want a purple cabinet because I don't like purple. Just why I have the 2 reds next to each other, I thought I'd show you the difference. So the right hand side is Barn Red, the left hand side is Honky Tonk Red. So you can see Honky Tonk Red is a lot brighter than Barn Red. I think it's quite helpful to see 2 close colours next to each other sometimes, because when you see them on furniture or on a colour swatch, it's not always obvious. So I love Honky Tonk Red. It's a super bright, vibrant shade, and the coverage is exceptional considering sometimes reds can be a little bit iffy with coverage, and that is the only amount of purple that I'm going to use. That's the only tiniest amount on my brush, and I'm just going to dab it on and then use a little bit of water to kind of do exactly the same as I did with the Barn Red and Peony combination and just kind of melt it in. But I actually like this colour better. It's actually so surprising how different adding a tiny amount of another colour can alter your original colour. I love playing around with colour combinations, colour mixing, blending, all those things, because you can create some really unique colour combinations. So I was much happier with that. It doesn't really translate on screen how different it is, but I felt that it was a little bit brighter, and it did give that more kind of raspberry tone that I was going for, whereas the first combination that I tried just looked a little bit dull in real life. It perhaps didn't on screen, but it just looked a little bit dull for what I was wanting to achieve. So I just worked in small sections and pretty much repeated that process so that I had full coverage around the entire table. You can see here I'm just working on a paper plate so that I don't get my paint mixed up in the actual tubs themselves and cross-contaminate. So, some of you may be aware that I went to Germany recently to take part in a paint workshop. I was very kindly asked back again. I went last year and I was asked back again, so I must have done something right. And on that paint workshop, I met some incredible people, and one of those is a husband and wife duo called Made by Marley. And I absolutely love the pair of them. They were such lovely people, and I urge you to go and check out their YouTube channel if you don't already follow them. They're also on all the other social media channels as well, but they are YouTubers. So their furniture is very eclectic, kind of bohemian, Indian inspired, and she was using some stencils. You know I'm a massive stencil fan as well, and I was like, where'd you get your stencils from? And these are them. They're off Amazon, and there's quite a hefty pack. They're only kind of A4 size, but they're all the kind of styles that I absolutely love. So very kind of bohemian, Indian. They've got some really nice detail on them. And the ones that I was particularly interested in using for this are the ones that I can use as borders. There's absolutely loads of different styles. You know that I designed a stencil of my own with Dixie Belle, and obviously that was very bohemian. It had like lotus flower inspiration from it as well, which I absolutely love. So this pack of stencils I will link in the description below. It is an Amazon link obviously, but that's where they're from. They're very, very inexpensive for the amount of stencils that you get in the pack. This is the one that I saw being used, and I was like, I need that in my life immediately. I love that one, absolutely love it. And where are the ones that I've just picked out? So yeah, the ones that I think will particularly work quite well are this kind of size. Obviously I'm working on quite a small piece, and these kind of continuous patterns that I can create borders and stuff with, I think will work really well on this. So that's what I'm going to do next. I'm going to build a little design on this piece. The colour that I'm going to stencil with is an off-white. So this is called Drop Cloth, and it's a warm, antique-y off-white colour. So coverage is really good. Don't need to do any more than one coat on stencilings, because I hate doing that when you have to stencil something and then the coverage isn't great and then you have to do it again. Not about that. So the coverage is really good on this. Like I say, it's a warm kind of antique-y white, because you know that's the kind of look we're going for. I don't want a crisp white. So that's what I'm going to do now. Also, this is the brush that I use for stenciling, because I'm still in search of the perfect stencil brush, and I haven't found one yet. So I use the Dixie Belle smallest round brushes, and then because the bristles are quite long, I just get a piece of masking tape, wrap it around the bristles, and that keeps them nice and compact so I can get nice precision with my paint. So when you are stenciling, what you need to do is apply the paint to the bristles of your brush, and then take off the excess paint off your bristles, because otherwise you're just going to end up with too much paint going through your stencil and you will end up with bleed through. So I am dabbing the paint off my bristles in between this video, but obviously it's edited, so I just thought I'd explain that that's what I'm doing. And you just want to work slowly with a stencil. You need to keep it as flat to the surface as you possibly can, using masking tape or your hands to help do so. And if you do go over the edge, just get a little piece piece of shop cloth or kitchen roll or anything like that, dampen it down, and you can just rub it before the paint's had a chance to dry, and that just erases any areas where you've gone over, especially with small stencils like this, which can be quite fiddly to do. For the top, I wasn't going to go too heavy with the design, and I wanted a central kind of pattern on the top, so I'm just finding the center point with some chalk and a ruler, which is very easily wiped off afterwards. I'll show you how to do that, because every time I show it on a video, people always say, how do you remove the chalk afterwards? And I'll show you. So I'm just going with kind of a central floral bohemian pattern in the center. I don't really know what it is, just something that fits the center of this little table. And then I just did little kind of corner emblems as well. And this is kind of a different style to what I have created before with my bone inlay pieces. Not quite the same vibe, although it's very similar. And then I did down the legs, because obviously the piece that I had the inspiration from had some design work down the legs, and this little bit of the stencil works perfectly. It just fit really well down the legs. And the good thing about this pack of stencils is that there's lots and lots of different shapes and styles, so that there is something that will probably fit your pieces, especially if you work on side tables like this. Might not be so suitable for a huge sideboard or something, but for me, and when I do my kind of stencil work, this is the kind of stuff that I really like doing. To remove the guidelines off the top that I'd done in chalk, it's super easy. You just spray a rag or a piece of shop cloth and then rub them off. Just make sure your paint is completely dry before you do that, otherwise you'll risk smudging your pattern that you've just stenciled, and you don't want to do that. As you can see on the front of this drawer, I'm actually sanding it off because I did a couple of different designs. It was a little bit of trial and error. I really wanted something that would work either side of that little handle, but it just wasn't. There was nothing in this pack that was quite right, because it is a tiny little drawer. So if that happens, if you either mess up your stencil or you add a stencil piece onto a certain part of your project and you hate it, don't panic. You can just use your base colour and paint over it. I sand it back so that you don't see any of your pattern through your base colour, you don't see any of the raised pattern underneath. So I give it a quick sand, applied my base colour, and then went again. I actually ended up using the same pattern as I did down the legs, and it actually works really well. It's not as kind of, in my head I wanted a little bit of a pattern either side of that handle, but it wasn't working. 3 attempts and I realised I needed to stop fighting the little piece and just go with what worked on that drawer front. Again, I did go over the line because I ended up cutting my stencil up so that I could fit it in the spaces. So I'm just using my little damp rag as an eraser. And then I did ever so slightly distress the stencil work on here. I'm using a 220 sanding sponge, and that's just going to ever so lightly distress it. And as you can see, it gives like a white cast on your paint. Don't panic, that's not going to stay there. So all you need to do is wipe it down with a rag, and then when you apply your top coat, which in my case is wax, it will go back to its proper colour. So that's like a white kind of dust that happens when you, it's obviously a chalk style paint, so it's going to give like a little bit of a dusty finish. But you can, as soon as you apply your top coat, it will go back. You can use any top coat you prefer. I sometimes use one of Dixie Belle's clear coats, but as you know, wax is my absolute favourite. So I'm just applying my clear wax with a sponge, and then I'm just going to give it a quick buff to remove the excess and give it a nice sheen. And then I'm going to further age it with a little bit of brown wax. Now, I'm very heavy-handed with my coloured waxes, as you may have gathered from previous videos. But on this one, I'm going very subtle. I'm barely using any product at all. I only want to give this a tiniest hint of brown wax. So I'm just concentrating on the areas around the edge of the drawer, and also kind of in the corners and crevices. I don't want to go too heavy with this at all. And then I'm just going to buff the excess off. In fact, you can barely pick it up on camera, but it is there. And it is slightly noticeable, and it just gives it that kind of hint of more of an antique-y finish. always make sure you buff your wax well if you are using wax. As always, there's a few close-ups of the finished piece, and although it is really nice working with these beautiful vintage and antique pieces that I do sometimes find, hopefully this video goes to show that you can absolutely take something a little bit more modern and also give it an upcycled quirky twist as well. Hope you enjoyed that video on this little piece and found it useful. Remember to subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will catch you next time. Bye!